Welcome back to the streets. And in lieu of it being the anniversary of 9/11, I had some good conversations out there with some people about this subject. And the first one up here is extremely good. It's a gentleman that was in the Air Force for 3 decades and worked closely with jets and on jets, and he's an engineer. He knows jet fuel, of course, and a lot of other things that are pertinent to the physical aspects of 9/11. Now, I didn't jump right into it with this gentleman. He, like a lot of career military people, some of them are very pragmatic to a fault. If you can be pragmatic to a fault, and they're very evidence prone, especially engineers, which I enjoy talking to because they're very, they don't speculate. They got to see. This is this. They're dealing with physics a lot, so they're very evidence prone. Which is why, when we cross the subject of 9/11 here, after going through Space Force and aliens and a couple other things, and me kind of feeling him out where he was, that he told me that he believed basically in the the official story, but then as I got into my conversation, some of his doubts started surfacing. So it was very good to see this transformation of him coming around to, if nothing else, taking into consideration that what we have been told about 9/11 is a complete fabrication. And it doesn't take much, of course, to do that. So, once again, if you like this video, you will hit the like button. If you care, you will share, and then share again. And then if you can, of course, you will contribute. So, let's get into this one, huh? Without further ado, on the streets.
A little old, I think. I'm 67. I don't think it'll take me.
Yeah. But in reality, haven't we already had?
Oh, sure.
We have things in space already.
Right. It's like Army Air Force became the Air Force because we'd had an Air Force for years. We just didn't call it the Air Force, right?
Yes,
exactly. Same thing. We've been doing things in space. My son works for the Air Force as a civilian in Colorado, and for some years now, he's been the chief engineer of all the satellite ground stations around the world.
Wow.
And so, that's a space force. Without them, we couldn't go to war. The satellites and the ground stations that keep up and everything, we get all the data off them. So, what's that with a space force? And when we talk about a space force, we're not talking about people going into space and fighting wars in space. We're talking about people on the ground.
Oh, yeah.
Keeping the assets in the air.
Yeah.
In the space.
I mean, everything from laser weapons to, sound to, I don't know, from what you can, what you can get that is leaked out, or the weapons that we have, they're awesome. They're awesome.
I think he knows almost.
Yeah. I tested F-15s and F-16s and a little bit of other airplanes while I was there as a test director. I wasn't a pilot, but I was sitting on the ground running a test program and running the control room, things like that. That was my job there for several years.
Now, speaking of space, lately, of course, I don't know how, that's why I like talking to guys like you. You can tell me if it's BS or not.
Maybe.
Well, you can at least give me your opinion. The UFO phenomena. That there are pilots that have seen things that are unexplainable and all. Have you ever experienced or had pilots or know of anything of that? Is there any validity to that?
I have no idea. Yeah. But you're right. I've never seen or heard tell anybody that had first-hand experience. So I couldn't tell you anything about it.
And you probably couldn't if you did. Because,
Well, maybe, I don't know.
well,
But
I mean, there's a
honestly,
lot.
I don't know anything.
Well, if you're familiar with Bill Cooper was a gentleman. He's probably one of the first original citizen journalist whistleblowers, but he was Navy intelligence, and he talks about it in this book, Behold the Pale Horse, where he's on watch, and boom, this thing comes out of the water, about the size of a football field, and hovers, and then goes, and like plays around a little bit, and then dives back in. Then, of course, I have blood. Captain, everybody's coming out. And they see this thing maneuver for about, I don't know, I think it was 20 minutes. They watch this thing do maneuvers going in and out of the water. And allegedly, so everybody was told, you didn't see this. If you ever talk about it again, it's, your whole life, your career, your children's lives, everybody's lives will be, So, you don't know if, so I guess some of the stuff is real or not if they're going to clamp on it like that. And then can you believe him?
Yeah, you don't know, and you'll never know unless you see it yourself. That's the only thing to be sure, and I've never seen it, so
I've seen some strange. I remember as like when I was about 16, hanging out with some friends in the front yard. It was about dusk. I'm on the car window, leaning on the hood, right. I'm looking up at the sky, and so it was about not that many stars in the sky. This would be lost. But I was just happened to be gazing in this portion of the sky, and what looked like a star. It started moving very slowly, and that you could notice, just a little bit more than the hands of a clock, in the opposite direction of the other star. Then it did a curve. And then it did this. And by this time, I'm like, got my old man out. Look at this. We're calling up the Coast Guard. Of course, the Coast Guard's going, we don't see nothing. But we're watching this thing maneuver. And to say, if you weren't watching it, hey, how you doing? It would look like a star. You would just, you gaze right by it. But if you were watching it, you'd notice it doing these maneuvers. And then finally, it just kind of like faded off that quick. And I was back in, 63? So, I don't know. I mean, how do you explain that?
Personal experience, so I can't really tell you.
See, that's something I experienced personally. I went, oh, wait a second. Well, why?
Well, I know people that have, I've met people that have told stories, of course, and I have no way to know if it's true or not. Yeah. But other than that, I had no experience at all with it, so I can't comment one or the other. But I think there could be. I mean, it only makes some sense.
Anything's possible.
But as far as we not really know anything more about that.
I haven't seen any little green men myself either. I mean, none of the Greys have come visited me. So I don't. All that stuff. The Giants too. I haven't seen anything.
I don't know, but
it's more to heaven and earth than you and I shall ever know, Horatio.
Well, that's true. That's very true. We might know it someday, but we won't be able to tell you. Really.
I'm still trying to find out mysteries like this. I mean, this is still a mystery to us.
Well, I think that's a pretty well understood mystery from this point because of all the
really.
No, yes, I do, because when you say 3 buildings, but clearly when these buildings collapse, I mean, I know I'm an engineer, so I know that when things like this large collapse, it caused a tremendous amount of, and you saw it in the video in New York City, that caused a tremendous amount of outrush of air, and if that air's got a lot of fire.
Yeah, it's called like a plasmic flow, which would come from like volcanoes or an explosion.
I didn't know whether you understand plasmic flow, but yes, exactly what it is. And
which would basically come from an explosion.
Yes, but the explosion also comes just the fact there's an awful lot of air trapped in this building below them.
But that building number 7, it was from where we're standing to the other side of the French Market. In between there, none of those buildings collapsed into their own footprint in 6 seconds. That building also housed all 16 of our intelligence agencies and the mayor's emergency bunker. It was a fortress.
no one's been able to explain the 3 pools of molten metal that burned for 2.5 months under each of those buildings. Debris that was analyzed by architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth, over 3,000 of some of the best architects and engineers in the world, have said there was nanothermite, up to 3 tons of it, in that debris. So what really nanothermite, as you know, would be a high-grade military explosive that is water-soluble. Maintenance men could paint it on the walls and they wouldn't know it. They also make it into strips of tape, which also cuts through steel in a matter of seconds. So that's where the 3 pools of molten metal would come from. So those are the questions that are not answered. Seeing this building collapse with perfect controlled demolition with the crimp, with the splivs coming out, when only sporadic fires were in it, and the fact that it was not even mentioned in the 9/11 report, even though it was the 3rd largest structural steel failure in history, and even though since and before we've had steel buildings catch on fire where many floors have been gutted and yet the building stood, and the only day in history where 3 steel buildings collapsed into their own footprint was on 9/11, defying all laws of physics.
Well, it's a convincing argument. I just don't have any technical information about it. But
being that you're an engineer, I would beg you to do this.
I shouldn't have told you that, right?
No, I want you to. You should go to the guys that speak your language. I was fortunate enough to meet one of the originators of architects and engineers for 9/11 Truth out here. Annie, 911truth.org.
Okay.
Go speak to the guys that are your brethren and see what they have to say, because I'm looking at this. Why would anybody put their lives and reputations on the line if they're just blowing smoke? We need some answers.
Well, you know, curiously enough, just this week my mother-in-law is in town, and I'm 10 years older than my mother-in-law, I can tell you anything. I married a young woman recently. But she's in town and she wanted to see New Orleans. She wanted to see all the things that we're in the Dallas area. So she wanted to see all that. So we were at the George Bush Presidential Museum in Dallas, and they had this towering thing of steel that came out of the World Trade Center, that's what that happened in his watch, right? And I looked at it and thought it was kind of weird that it was so, it looked like it'd been, looked like a candy bar you left out in the sun, right? So it was all just melty and just, I thought,
pitted.
Yeah, and I just couldn't quite get my head around the fact that was caused by, like I say, jet fuel. I've been around jet fuel most of my life, and I've seen small fires in jet fuel, and they burn, but they don't burn very hot.
Thank
really,
you.
because it's kerosene.
Right.
Kerosene does pretty something.
Thank you. And these fires were burning cold. That's why it was black smoke.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's another thing. If anything burns hot, it burns without a lot of smoke. But I do remember that it just looked odd to me. And,
Thank you.
The rivet heads and so forth were distorted.
Thank you.
I just didn't
Doesn't
see
make
that.
sense.
No. I had an airplane one time. I was running a test. We were testing brake systems, and some fuel that had been left in the refueling port of this airplane, a fighter, had come down through a drainage thing. Normally it's in the air, and it loses that, and it just evaporates in the air,
Right.
Well, this particular airplane had a little clog in that drainage thing, and so it had maybe a pint of fuel in it, something like that. And it fell down onto a hot brake pad and immediately burst into flames.
Right.
But it burnt up and
then gone.
around it was gone, and it didn't even scorch the paint on the airplane. So it wasn't burning very hot.
Thank you. See, you know the basic physics. It's why we need questions. They blew smoke at us, and nobody's gone back to ask questions about it. Check those guys out. God bless you. That's great.
And what we put in a jet fuel, in a fighter jet, even hotter burning fuel than what you put in a passenger plane, right?
I mean, if what they were saying is true, that those fires melted that stuff, then why don't jets just melt on the runway?
That's true. they're not only getting the heat of the jet fuel, but they're also getting a lot of oxygen poured over the crust.
Well, that's why they call it jet fuels. Jets. Pleasure talking to you, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay, so, I don't know, a few minutes later, 10, 15 minutes later, this gentleman came back. And he had some things to say about, we got into the Pentagon because it so happens that one of his sons was stationed at the Pentagon. And so we went through, the evidence there. And once again, I believe I got him thinking. So hopefully, we can keep on getting this out there, and eventually we'll find out the truth, or you will. The truth will be known. Well, we know the truth. We just hope the people that perpetrated this act finally get to justice. Wouldn't that be nice? Huh? Well, yeah. God, please, huh? Oh, man. Before you take me, I mean, you take me anytime you want, but, I'd come up there with a big smile on my face if I could see these guys fry for what the hell they've done. All right, that's my prayer. And again, if you like, you share, and if you can, you give. See you in the streets.
2008, my son he worked for the Air Force, and said he was chief engineer of a ground station, but he was sent to the Pentagon for a year in 2008. In fact, he met both President Bush and newly elected President Obama, and we went to visit him there, he gave us a tour of the Pentagon. You can't just walk into the Pentagon and walk in, right? So, he works there, and even I was working for the Air Force at the time still, and so I had my credentials, and even with that, we had special clearance to come in. So he took us through the whole building, and which is huge.
Yeah.
And one of the places he took us was down a tunnel that they left in the building, in each facet of it, so you could drive vehicles into the internal part. It was so large, in order to deliver large things, you had to do it right? So as we walked through that tunnel, it was just below his office area, and they left it as it was after 9/11. So there was black soot and smoke damage and some burnt asphalt and so forth in that tunnel where the airplane had crashed into the building there. And they repaired everything else, but they left that. But it struck me at the time that it couldn't have been a very hot fire because the concrete was still intact, but the asphalt was burnt.
Plus, as a man that knows aviation, is it possible for I think it was a 747, if I'm not mistaken, to fly 4 feet off the ground in a level? Is that even possible?
Sure, it's possible.
Is it? But here's the kicker. The engines hung below the fuselage.
Yeah.
Where was the scrape marks? And how does, and here's
well, actually, the airplane, from what I understand, the airplane struck the building at the upper level, so it would not have hit. No. The original hole that you can see has it 4 feet off the ground. It's a perfect 16-foot diameter before it collapsed. It's a perfect 16. Now here's the kicker. Here's what really gets you. An airplane is essentially a hollow aluminum shell. Right, yeah.
Okay.
With some reinforcement.
The walls at the Pentagon were 18-inch thick steel reinforced concrete walls. How does a hollow aluminum tube puncture a perfect hole through 8 18-inch thick steel encrusted walls and come out in the center of the Pentagon? How is that even physically possible?
Well, that I can't tell you. I don't know, but I do know that the men and women he worked with in that office had been. He was temporarily there. He was there for a year on a career brooding assignment, but they had been there for some years, and many of them had been there on 9/11/01, 7 years before. And they told him that they had their staff meetings in a conference room around one of the corners.
Right.
Corners, 5-sided corner.
Right.
and that they had just finished their staff meeting, got up, walked out, some 30 of them in this conference room. And they said if anybody asked one more question, it took 5 more minutes, they'd all been killed because they walked out of there and walked around their corner, went into their offices, and bam, the airplane went right through the conference room. So it happened, I know that. I mean,
But was it an airplane? Could have been a cruise missile, because what can puncture through that kind of concrete? I mean, a steel, look, I'm sorry. It's like telling me you can take a beer can and puncture through that granite. It just doesn't make sense, physical sense.
well, of course, don't forget, it's not only that tube, but there's a hell of a lot of mass inside the aircraft.
But where, again, are the wings, the fuselage? Where's any debris?
Well, it was there. I mean, it was cleared away, I think. But
No, it wasn't. There was very little debris. I mean, we're talking about, when you see the pictures of it, there are things that should have been knocked over by the wings were not knocked over. I mean, they were in the path of. And you know, the wings would have sheared off. The engines made out of titanium would have busted and fell off.
Right.
They're not there. So they're telling us this entire airplane folded up. The wing, and this is, I've heard a NIST representative say this. And I looked at the screen, I waited, well. The force was such that the wings folded up and then vanished into the hole. I'm going, wait, what is this, a David Copperfield magic trick? How is that? I mean, I'm not an engineer, and I'm going,
You're right.
That doesn't make sense.
The wings would seem to be sheared off, and you're right.
Now, I'm going to tell you something. Just the other day, I was speaking to an Israeli couple out here. The kid's grandmother living in New York next to a Muslim family. The day before 9/11, a Muslim woman came up because they were friends and warned her from going downtown the next day.
That's frightening, you know. But
Now, this is the kind of testimony I get out of it. It's like when I met the guy from the 9/11 Truth, right? I've spoken, there's another one, there's an EMT. You can see this on my site. This lady was an EMT driver during the day of 9/11. With her crew on the way to the Twin Towers. 2 blocks away, they stopped to take care of some injuries, clear some debris. Bomb squad comes up and says, you do not go any further, you stay right here. And they're going, what? You kidding me? We got people hurt. We're going to go do that. Stay right here. It's an order. While they're standing there wondering why they've been ordered not to go any further, the street they were going to go down, the cars started blowing up. Boom, 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 boom. They grabbed their cameras with pictures of this. That night, the company calls up and says, everybody turn in your cameras. She turned in the cameras and kept the pictures. They all did. They have the pictures. This upset her so much, she had to quit. She retired and went down to Florida. I met this lady out here. She gave me the desert. She was with her family. I can't see any reason why she had any reason to lie to me. Or she didn't seem hysterical. You know, she didn't seem like, you know, I mean, she seemed a grounded person. But this was my personal experience of 9/11. We have been lied to about that day. Big time.
Well, I can believe that. I mean, I believe that we were lied to, because sometimes you simply can't tell the truth, because if you do, then you tell our enemies exactly what you know about them, and you can't do that.
Yeah, but there are enemies within our own. I mean, what just came out in the New York Times. They're bragging about having somebody in the Trump administration that, you know, being the adults in the room. Well, we didn't hire some anonymous, you know, invisible adult. We hired Donald Trump. What do you? And you got liberals applauding it. All right. Sorry. Thank you very much for me borrowing your husband. I appreciate it very much. I just love it running into guys with his knowledge, though. I got to pick his brain. God bless you. Thank you.